I grew up in a laundry myself. My parents owned a laundry in Macon, Georgia. And we were the only Chinese in the whole community. And I've thought about that over the years, from time to time. And I was busy doing other stuff, so I never really got a focus on it. But once I retired, had a little, free time to concentrate on this, I thought it might be interesting to write about our experiences in Georgia, because they're different from Chinese in California, other areas where there are many Chinese. So that led to me writing sort of a memoir, which I titled Southern Fried Rice. And in the course of doing that, I did a lot of other reading on the side about other Chinese laundries and so forth, and the history of Chinese laundries well before my parents came to this country. And in the course of doing that, I learned a lot of interesting things that really fascinated me about the history of how Chinese laundries played a very significant role in American history, especially for Chinese Americans. And that's sort of what led me to write this book, Chinese Laundries. Now, something about the title. Hardest thing about writing a book probably is coming up with a title. I focused a lot on tickets as a symbolic representation of both how Chinese and Chinese laundries were perceived by mainstream or Anglo-America, and also the sort of role that it played for Chinese. So here's a picture of a very typical laundry ticket that Chinese laundries use. And you can see that on the bottom half, there's an inventory of whatever clothing, how many of each article that the person brought in, so that the laundryman could reassemble the package and price it, and then return the laundry to the customer. However, people who couldn't read Chinese would look at this and they'd say, "Oh, chicken scratch." And they would make fun of Chinese characters, written as well as spoken. And so for them, the Chinese laundry and its ticket sort of represented sort of a, foreign exoticness and something sort of that was often treated with derision, kind of somewhat hostile humor at times. Now, on the other hand, while Chinese did a lot of other occupations, such as fishing, lumber work, farming, manufacturing, and so forth, the laundry really was the very first form of self-employment on a large scale that the Chinese immigrants entered into. And as I don't need to tell you that in 1882, the Chinese were excluded from entry into the United States, with a few exceptions. And this created a very difficult economic survival for the Chinese, who were adaptive enough to find a niche and eke out their existence. So there was a window of opportunity, probably in the late 1800s, early 1900s, before white laundry started escalating on a larger scale. But for a while, the Chinese kind of got the foot in the door, and this is what enabled them to be able to not only make enough money to send home to their relatives, in China, but also to survive themselves. So that's why I called the laundry ticket as sort of an entryway, sort of a passport that enabled the early Chinese and their descendants to survive in America. As you might imagine, Chinese immigrants who came from Guangdong to the United States were not laundrymen in China, as some people who are unsophisticated about this may have thought. They'd ask me, well, did your father run a laundry in China or something? No way. In China, as in everywhere else, women did the laundry. Men, this is not a feminine occupation anywhere in the world. So this is a commentary from a laundry trade journal, a white laundry trade journal You may not be able to read it well in the back, but basically it's a commentary to say, you know, this is an observation by a white person saying, you know, it's kind of interesting, we went to China and we didn't see any laundries over there. How come they got so many laundries over in the United States? You know, it's kind of like a paradox in a way. So they're sort of pointing out that, you know, Chinese laundries are something that are a phenomenon that exists outside of China. And they're not unique to the United States, by the way. I found, like in New Zealand, there were lots of Chinese laundries. And in many other parts of the world, at that time, the Chinese who went there found that laundry was a way to make money. You know, not a lot of money, but enough to live on. And they were able to do this because other people didn't want to do this kind of work. Who wants to take other people's dirty, smelly laundry and work with it? So, because no one else wanted to do it, Chinese did it. And then later it became contested as, you know, other people saw that this was a financially lucrative thing. So I kind of wondered, you know, if the Chinese immigrants, like our ancestors, had come 100 years later, what would they have done? There would be no need for a laundryman now. Everyone's got a washing machine at home and so forth. They do fabrics and so forth. So it was kind of a, you know, kind of a little unique opportunity in history. So let me kind of start with just giving you a few visual images, some of which you may have seen before. Here's a sign in New York City talking about Chinese laundry. Hand laundry, by the way, the motivation was kind of made me want to. And it was her idea to move to San Francisco. Right. You could mix with the Chinese community and learn Chinese. Can you comment on that and how was the adjustment from a small town down south? Okay. Sure. Yeah, you're quite right. My mother was a driving force. In fact, when I wrote that book, it was originally intended to be about her, almost exclusively or predominantly, but eventually, for a variety of reasons, it shifted from her, but you're right in your perception. We moved partly because we were isolated culturally and whatever, and so San Francisco certainly seemed a logical place. So my coming here was, I guess I came at 15, so when you're 15, you're somewhat adaptable. I mean, you're not really set in your ways. But at the same time, it wasn't entirely easy. A couple of examples. My mother felt like I should go to Chinese school and learn Chinese. I had some resistance to that. But I went. I went for about a week. Because my classmates were all 6 years old, and I was 15, and they were running circles around me. And I was there, 15 years old, 6'4", and they were little pipsqueaks and making fun of me. So I could relate to anyone who has any learning disabilities. But otherwise, I think in many ways the adjustment was difficult in the sense of, like, I kind of thought magically that, okay, now I'm in San Francisco and I'm with Chinese people and I'm Chinese, and that I would have an instant affinity or like or acceptance. But at the same time, I was a different breed of Chinese. I mean, like, I didn't know a lot about Chinese culture. We'd never eaten in a Chinese restaurant. And so I didn't know anything about things like that. And also, because all my life I had to, like, deal with both whites and blacks because there was no one else for me to deal with, you know, growing up. So I found Chinese in the Bay Area more, I guess you'd call it cliquish or clannish or, you know, standoffish. And I had kind of mixed feelings about that, or, you know, I had to kind of get used to that. And I remember being asked to join the Chinese student club at Lowell High School, and I thought, Chinese student club, what is that, you know? Why do you have that? And I was kind of naive, I didn't know. So those are kind of examples. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of just that. Yeah. Yes.
I certainly congratulate you on writing a book about all that the Chinese and other races had to go through. And I think it's a good trend now. At first, you know, we kids were ashamed of our parents
Mhm.
because they didn't know, I mean, they didn't
Right.
dress well, they didn't speak right. But now I think it's just marvelous that the children realize what they had to go through.
Yeah.
And this is a trend that I certainly recommend, that I certainly admire you for.
Well,
that
thank
we
you.
can read books like this and see what our parents went through and how we should be proud of what they had done.
Yes, thank you very much. I totally agree. I think in a way, I tell people, I sort of say, like, the older I get, the more Chinese I become. Because for a while, you know, I would almost like forget I was Chinese, and I'd walk by a mirror and I said, "Who's that guy?" And then I'd sort of say, "Oh, well, you know, I'm Chinese." But then I was sort of like, you know, I wasn't fully Chinese, or I wasn't as Chinese as Chinese Americans who grew up in a Chinese community. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that, you know, it's like I had to, back to the first question, I had to make that kind of adjustment. And then, like, sometimes I would be so busy with other stuff, I wouldn't even think about Chinese sorts of things. Then, like, growing up, yeah, we were embarrassed that everyone else's parents were doctors, lawyers, merchants, salesmen, whatever, and we lived in laundry, and we did laundry and sort of stuff, you know. But there are things that we shouldn't be embarrassed about. You know, we really stop to think about it. That they overcame a lot of adversity, and this is true of the restaurant people and the grocery people and so forth. Yeah. So, yeah, sir.
Did you ever come across this article about this municipal judge that was suing this Korean laundryman for $50 million?
Yeah, that was fairly recent. Yeah, that was recently. That's just a travesty. I mean, yeah.
Actually, the laundryman lost money because he had to hire.
Yeah, that's something that's really sad. Yeah, it's sad commentary. Yeah. Yes.
How many of the young generation do you think are aware of their parents' plights, hard work now?
Well.
Are they interested?
Okay, well, it'd be hard for me to give you an authoritative answer on that. I think that with some young people, they need to get led a little bit to it, and once they taste a little, then they get interested. I gave a talk in Atlanta last year at a group called the National Association of Asian American Professionals, and I was a little reluctant to speak to them. I was asked, you know, because this is a highly educated Chinese American organization of young professionals, you know, and I thought that if I went and talked to them about Southern fried rice, that was more the memoir of one time of year, that they wouldn't be interested in it. And so I didn't want to go and, you know, talk to people who are not interested when I have to talk about it. I mean, it'd be kind of an uphill battle. But they said that the person who was in charge said, "Oh, we need to know that sort of stuff." I mean, so I said to them, I said, "I don't know what to really tell young people today. I'm going to tell them what to do or what to think." I said, "I can tell them what it used to be like, and I can tell them about some historical realities." And they felt they wanted to do it. I went, and there were about 50 people there, and they really resonated well to it. So I think from that one example, I think that if you present material to people that might not know about it or be interested, there are ways to get them interested. Yeah.
From your research, do you find any significance in regional or dialect differences of groups establishing laundries, for example, farming people, or say agricultural or supermarkets, or Hubong people in the meat markets?
Well, I can't give a definitive answer on that, but I know there were Chinese laundries all over the United States. I looked at census schedules and so forth. Like one of my examples I use is Iowa. I looked in Iowa, and I found that in 1900 or 1910 there were 64 Chinese in Iowa, and every single one of them was like in their own county. It's almost like they staked out their own territory. Every single one of them ran a laundry. Yeah, see, I thought we were the only ones who were by ourselves, but it was all over the United States. There were other Chinese who were isolated all over in every state that you can imagine. Now, in terms of like who went into grocery and who went into what, I'm doing some interviews now with Mississippi Chinese. And I only knew a few before, but now I know like 15 or 20, and it's sort of a snowball thing because everybody knows everybody because they're all kind of interrelated. And the basic story is some guy is in Mississippi, he's running a grocery store, he has a relative in California, he says, hey, you're having a hard time in California, you come down to Mississippi and you can make more money. And you come and stay with me, and this, and the story repeats itself over and over. So you get people from a certain village, and all of their relatives and descendants all go to the same part of the United States, and they all kind of get in the same business. And the laundry, I can say, you know, I know from my parents' generation and their relatives, they had cousins and uncles or whatever with laundries in Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama. And so it's that same sort of chain of migration. And I know that doesn't exactly answer your question, but that's kind of why you see certain similarities in the geographical origin of people who are living in a similar place within the United States. I mean, the same place within the United States. Yeah.
I wonder whether you know that
Comments, yes.
How long it took you to write this book?
Well, that's a good question. You know, you never really can know exactly when you begin. I mean, it's like incubates and stuff, you know. Probably the greater part of maybe a year and a half, but, you know, that's just a rough guess. Yeah, well, yeah, you got to do a few other things once in a while, you know, off and on, yeah. Right. You thinking of writing a book?
No, I was thinking, how much effort you had.
Well, you know, it's a labor of love sometimes. So if you like what you're doing, you don't feel like it's work. You know, you sort of get immersed. You find it rewarding. You find it enjoyable. You find it intellectually stimulating. You learn things that are surprising to you. You say, "Wow, you know, that's amazing. I want to like share that with other people." So, yeah, don't ever try to write a book. I mean, in the sense of saying, don't ever say, tomorrow I'm going to write a book. I mean, kind of at least get halfway done and then say it. That's my belief anyway, because I think if you say it at the beginning, you put too much pressure on yourself. You know, it's like you don't know where you're going. But when you get halfway there, then it's downhill. You know, you've done all this already. You know, why quit, right? It should be downhill. It should be easy going downhill rather than going uphill.
Did you use a computer?
Yeah, thank God for computers, yeah. It certainly makes life easier, definitely. Something like that, yeah. Yeah.
Do you make comparison with any other nationality, like Japanese or Koreans, and who are also...
Yeah, maybe that'll be my next. I know I didn't do that.
You know, laundry business and sourcing, in various areas.
Well, the Chinese really were the first to really get in laundry. Now that the Chinese are out of that and their children are in it, some of the laundries are going to Vietnamese and Korean immigrants that don't have a lot of education. That's a way of them starting in, but I don't think there's enough of them. And anyway, it was beyond my scope of what I was trying to do. So you kind of have to kind of like define things somewhat. Yeah. Maybe one last question or what? No?
Two more questions.
Okay.
I was wondering, who do you feel encouraged you the most to write this book?
Who encouraged me the most to write the book? Now that's hard to say. No, you know, as I told people when I talk about stuff when I write, I said usually, you know, it's customary to say, "Boy, I sure wish my parents could be here to see me now." But I have to say exactly the opposite. I said, well, it's fortunate that my parents can't hear me talk about this because they would be mortified to know that I'm talking about all this stuff. So at the same time, I feel it's important to talk about these things. You know, it's good for other people to know about and learn about. And that's part of the reward because like I go and talk to other people and they say, well, we had a similar experience. Or, that sort of thing, and that kind of validates what I felt. You know, like when you first write, you don't know what other people feel. You say, well, all I can say is this is what I felt, And then when you find like maybe 9 out of 10 other people say, wow, same thing with us, same thing with us, then that's a really very powerful incentive. And then maybe that motivates you to go and try to write another book.
One more. Carol?
Thank you very much for giving such valuable information. I really appreciate your book and writing it out for all of us. I was wondering, has this book been pushed by the Chinese Historical Society or the Chinese American Citizens Alliance? They
Sure.
would love to have this background.
Yeah, I gave a talk in San Diego at the San Diego Chinese Historical Society about a week ago about the Laundry book, but that was the first talk. Originally, this was going to be the first public presentation, but San Diego beat you guys out. But actually, I gave a better talk here than I did down there, because practice makes perfect. You know, so I figured out what didn't go well the first time, and I improved it now. The Southern fried rice I've talked about at a number of different places, including the one in San Francisco, Chinese Historical Society. So yeah, I'm making some inroads at like OCA, Organization of Chinese Americans and stuff. So it's just a matter of you know, getting publicity and getting people interested. Yes?
I want to thank you so much. Did you know we have one of the largest audiences we ever had? And I'm kind of predicting there must be about 20 guests that don't regularly come here. Could the people that don't come here, could you stand up, please? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I don't know about these people, and they're standing up too. But thank you so much. I mean, this is a really history in the making here. And I'm pretty sure about 50% were growing up in the grocery store. I was growing up meat market, and my wife was a Chinese grocery store. And Bill there, his father, was plucking chicken. I mean, everybody came the hard way. We weren't born with a silver spoon in our mouth. Well, we know how to sack away money. And so that's why today they're well off. They drive a nice car, nice home, and everything, because they learn how to save like you do. Every penny counts, you know. Every penny goes in a jar. You don't go out and spend on candy and everything else. So I'm sure that we'd like to have him come back and promote his book called Southern Fried Rice. Would you do that? Yeah, the war to get in touch with you. Meanwhile, he has this book for sale. It retails for over $15. It's $12 without tax. So he's going to stay for lunch.